everybody, this is Rosie, and today we're going to make another version of the eco-friendly shopping bag. This one is going to have a wrist strap and a zippered pocket. So let's get started. Here are the materials that you'll need to make the shopping bag. I'm using 100% cotton quilting fabric for the entire project. So for the bag itself, I have some fabric for the exterior and then I have some fabric for the lining. For the exterior, I've cut two pieces for the front and the back, and they're each 18 inches wide by 21 inches high. And then I did the same thing for the lining. I have two pieces of fabric cut out for the lining, and they are each 18 inches wide by 21 inches high. Then for the closure of the bag, you'll need two pieces of fabric that's 8 inches wide by 13 inches high. On one of the pieces, I have not fused any interfacing, but on the second piece, I did fuse a piece of woven interfacing. And then we are going to make a little zippered pocket, and for the lining of the pocket, you need one piece of fabric that is 8 inches wide by 10 inches high. And then you'll need a zipper that's about 9 inches for the zipper pocket that we're going to make. You'll need some all-purpose sewing thread, and then this part is optional. I am going to make a little wristlet to go with this project. You will need some hardware that's 3/4 of an inch wide, and you'll need to have a swivel clip and a D-ring. And then you'll need a piece of fabric that is 3 inches wide, and I've made this 20 inches long. It does not need to be that long. We will be cutting it down to size. And this piece will be used for the wristlet and the D-ring. You want to take both your exterior pieces and your lining pieces and cut a little 2-inch square out of the corner on the bottom of the bag. So you can simply take a ruler and just mark your 2-inch square, and then you'll go ahead and cut it out. Now you will be seeing me use a friction pen, and as always, I'm only using it for demonstration purposes. If you have a chalk wheel or some other tool, that's best to use, because while these marks will erase with heat, they do come back with cold. So use your friction pen with a lot of caution. Then after you have that drawn in, you can just go ahead and cut out those little squares. And you want to do this to the bottoms of both the exterior and the lining. The next thing that we need to do is make a little template so that we can cut out the top of the bag. So just take any plain piece of paper, you can use cardstock if you want, and you want to mark a box that's 7 inches down from the top and 3.5 inches in from the side. And this is part that we'll be cutting out right here. This is for the outer part of the bag. And then you want to take something round. I'm going to use a 2.5-inch circle. And I'm just going to round off that corner there, just like that. So we won't be cutting this part, we'll just be cutting along the curve. And then on this side, you'll take your ruler and we're going to measure 5.5 inches down from the top and 2.5 inches in from the side. And this right here will be the center of the bag. And again, I'm going to take that 2.5-inch circle and round up that corner. And then you'll go ahead and cut out both of these shapes. Now I'm going to mark and cut the shapes that I just drew with the template. So I have my exterior fabric here. I just placed them right sides together, and then I folded it in half, so this would be the center of the bag. Here's the cut edge, that's the outer part of the bag, and here is where we cut out the square. So I'm going to take that little template and I'm going to place the part that I marked for outer, or you can just say side of the bag. I'm going to place that right on the edge there, and I'll make sure that this edge of the paper is even with the top of the fabric. And then I'm just simply going to mark it. And I will be cutting through both the front and the back at the same time. Okay, now that I have that marked, I'm just going to move this part for the center of the bag right over to the fold, and make sure again that the top of the paper is even with the top of the bag there. Once you have everything all lined up and even, then you'll go ahead and mark this side. And once it's marked, you'll go ahead and just cut out on the lines that we just drew. So now everything is cut out, and this is what it should look like when you open it up. Now you'll go ahead and do the same exact thing to your lining pieces. Now I want to draw my sewing lines on this piece right here. So my seam allowance will be 1/2 inch, and I'll just take my ruler and I'll mark in 1/2 inch from each edge. You don't have to do this, but it is nice to have. It makes sure that your seam allowances are correct as you're sewing, and then it gives you a nice straight line to sew on. So you'll mark all 4 sides. And then after your sides are marked, you'll take that 2.5 inch circle and draw in that curve. And you'll do this on all 4 corners. Now I need to cut off a piece of this that's 5 inches down from the top edge here. So just to make sure that I'm cutting from the right end, because I'm using a directional print, I want to make sure that when this is turned down this way, that my cat will be right side up. So I'm going to cut the 5 inches off of this end. So I just take my ruler and measure in 5 inches and then cut. And now I have these 2 pieces, and we're going to place the zipper in between these 2 sections. Also, I didn't say, but you do want to do this on the piece that has the woven interfacing on it. Now we're going to prepare the zipper to sew into the pouch. So I have a 9 inch zipper here. You might be able to get away with a shorter one. We are going to cut this to size. So I want the zipper length to be 6.5 inches. So I'm just going to draw a couple of lines. I'll draw one line at this end, and then I'll draw another line that's 6.5 inches up from the one that I just drew. And then we're going to cut those ends off, but you want to make sure that before you cut this side that you pull your zipper pull down first. So I can snip this one off, and then I'll pull down my zipper pull, and then I'm going to cut these ends off here. So if I've measured correctly, it should now be 6.5 inches. Now that my zipper is cut to the correct length, I need to have a couple of zipper tabs. So I just took some of my scrap fabric and I cut out 2 pieces. Each piece is 2 inches high by 1.5 inches wide. And you're going to take these pieces and you're going to wrap it around the zipper tape, just like this, and you'll put a little clip in there. Now the reason why I made them 2 inches high is because the zipper tape is 1 inch. So 1 inch times 2 is 2 inches. And you'll do this to both ends, and then After you have everything clipped in place, you're going to go over to the sewing machine and sew this tab 1/4 of an inch away from the edge. And you'll do that on both sides. So I'm going to go do that right now off camera. I have both of the zipper tabs sewn into place. I used a stitch length of 2.5 and I sewed 1/4 of an inch away from each end. When you wrap the tabs around the zipper tape, you want the right side of the fabric to be facing the zipper tape. And then after it's sewn, you'll just pull them out like this on each side. And it should now measure 8 inches long. Now I'm ready to clip the zipper to the exterior pieces. So I'll start with this one over here. I'm going to pin this face down or right side down to the right side of the fabric, and the right side is always the side of the zipper pull. So you'll just place it and I'll clip it in place, and we'll go over to the sewing machine and then we'll sew straight across with a 1/4 inch seam. Now I'm ready to sew the zipper. You can use a zipper foot if you want. I'm just using a narrow foot on my machine, and I'll stitch with a stitch length of 2.5, and I'll just let the edge of that foot right along the edge of the zipper tape there. Back stitch. You do need to start with your zipper pulled down a little bit, and then when you get to the spot where that is, you'll just pull it up past your presser foot there. And then you'll sew to the other end. And backstitch. So here's what you should have so far. The zipper is sewn in between the two exterior pieces here, and on this side you have your lines marked and your curves should be opposite each other. So now you want to take the piece that was for your pocket lining, and we're going to sew the right side of it to the opposite side of this side of the zipper. So the zipper that's attached to the bottom panel here, this is going to get attached this way. And then you'll just clip it in place the same way that we did before, and we'll go over to the sewing machine and sew that in. I have the lining pinned to the opposite side of the zipper, and I'm just going to sew over that previous line of stitching. And this is the line of stitching that we created when we sewed the zipper to the exterior side of the bag. And I'm sewing with a stitch length of 2.5. Back stitch. Now my zipper pull is open and it's right here, so I'll lift my presser foot and I'll just pull that zipper closed. And then I can finish sewing across to the other side. Now that I have the pocket lining sewn to the opposite side of the zipper, I'm going to fold it back just like this. You want to press everything on both sides. So you want to press the pocket lining side and you want to press the exterior side. And I'm going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch away from this edge here. And I'll use a stitch length of 3.0, and you just want to stitch all the way across. It's back stitch. And back stitch at the other end. Next we're going to want to fold this up this way, but we want the bottom folded edge of this piece to be 4 inches up from this side. So you'll take your ruler and then you'll just mark 4 inches up. And then you'll fold this piece up right to that line right there. So the fold of the lining pocket should be touching this line. And then you'll just clip everything in place. And you do want to keep your zipper open right now. So I have that clipped, and this is what it looks like on the other side. You want to leave your zipper open, and the pocket lining is right inside there. And now we're going to put this aside because we need to work on the wrist strap. Now we're making the wristlet and the tab for the D-ring. So you want to take that piece of fabric that we cut 3 inches wide, it was about 20 inches long, and you're going to fold it in half with the long raw edges together. And then you're going to press it down. Then you're going to open it up and you're going to fold each long end into the center. And then you'll press that, and then you'll take the opposite long end, press that into the center, and then you'll fold the entire piece in half so you have the 2 folded edges together, and then you'll press everything. Now we don't need this whole length for the wristlet. We only need about 15 inches or whatever your desired length is. So I'm just going to trim this down to 15 inches. And now that I've trimmed it, I'll use this piece for the wristlet and this piece will be for the D-ring. It's longer than we need, but that's okay. Then you're going to take your hardware, and I have this swivel clip right here. We're going to put that onto the end of the wristlet strap. And you're going to open up the ends of the strap. And you're going to clip the 2 ends right sides together. And once you have them clipped, you'll go over to the sewing machine and you're going to sew straight across this seam at about 1/4 of an inch. And then once you've sewn it, you'll iron that seam open, and then you'll put everything back together the way it should be. And then you're going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch away from each edge here. And then for the D-ring, you just want to take this piece for now and stitch 1/8 of an inch away from each long edge. And I'm going to do this off camera, and I'll sew with a stitch length of 3.0. So here's the wristlet all sewn. Now when I was done sewing it, all I did was move this clasp right here, this swivel clip, right down towards the end where the seam was. That was the seam where I joined the 2 ends of this strap. And then I just stitched right in the ditch, right where that seam was, and I went over it a couple of times. Now for the D-ring, all you want to do is slip that on, and we're going to attach it to the little pouch. Here's the tab for the D-ring, and it's longer than we need. So I just want it to be about 1.5 inches away from the fold here. So I'm measuring 1.5 inches from this fold, and then I'll just trim off the excess. And then I just want to clip it to the opposite side of the zipper pull. So I'm going to clip it right over here, right over the zipper tab. And now you want to take the other piece, the opposite side of this piece, and that's the one that does not have any interfacing on it, and we want to put these pieces face together, right sides together, but you really do have to make sure that your zipper is open. Make sure that your D-ring is out of the way. And now we'll clip these together. So just clip it all the way around. I'm going to start sewing around, and I'm going to sew on that line that we drew previously for our stitching lines. And I'm sewing with a stitch length of 2.5. You can back stitch if you want. Right here is where I have that D-ring tab, so I'm actually going to sew over that a couple of times. Back stitch. When you get to the curve, you just want to go slow. If you go slowly, then you don't have to lift your presser foot and reposition. So just keep sewing all the way around until you get back to where you started, and just go slowly around your curves. And then you can back stitch when you get back to where you started. Now I have it completely sewn around. We did not leave an opening. We want to trim these curves. So you'll just go around all four corners just like this. And then after you're done clipping those curves in, you just want to make some little notches where the curves are, and do that to all four curves. After you have everything trimmed and notched, I'm just going to take my scissors and just cut a little triangle off of each side here where the pocket lining is. And now I want to iron open all my seams. And then when I get to where the curve is, I just slip the point turner in between those layers there, and then I fold down that seam allowance, I fold it back and I press it. And you're just going to keep ironing all the way around, just like this. After you have everything pressed, you're ready to turn everything right side out. I only pressed down one seam. I did not press from both sides. If you want to, you can. It's no big deal. Now the way that you're going to turn this is you're going to reach inside this opening right here, and then you're going to see right here is your zipper opening. You want to reach in through the zipper opening and pull it through. And then you'll reach in through the zipper opening for the other side and pull that through. And then you want to round out all of your corners. And to get to this rounded corner right here, you're going to reach in between the pocket lining and the opposite side of the bag. And you'll be able to get your fingers down in there and push. And you can take your point turner and use your rounded end right here. Again, go in between, behind that pocket lining and the other side of the exterior bag. And then just roll that rounded edge of the point turner around that corner. That'll help push it out. And then you can do the same thing on the opposite end. And then after you've gotten everything out pretty well, you'll take your fingers and you'll roll these seams so that the seam is right in the center there. You don't want it to be skewed one way or the other. You want it to be right in the center, so right on the top there. And you'll go ahead and press that down really well. Now that everything is nicely pressed, we want to do two more things. First of all, we want to just sew straight across this folded edge right here. And what that's going to do is it's going to close up the opening that we had here to turn this. And it will also secure down that pocket lining. So you want to make sure that the pocket lining is all nice and smoothly in there. You'll close your zipper and then you'll do the top stitching here. Then after we do that, we want to go and top stitch all the way around the entire piece here, about 1/4 of an inch away from the edge. I'm going to start by doing my top stitching 1/8 of an inch away from this folded edge right here, and I'll be doing it with a stitch length of 3.0. And we are stitching through all of the layers right now. And you want to back stitch. And now we'll go ahead and do the top stitching all around. I'm using the narrow foot on my machine to do the top stitching, and that is probably a little bit less than 1/4 of an inch away from the edge. So I'm going to start around here, and I'm still using the stitch length of 3.0. Go slowly around your curves. I'll open up the zipper just a little bit so it doesn't get in the way. And then when you get back to where you started, you'll just join that previous stitching there, and then you can backstitch a little bit. And now we'll put this piece aside and work on the bag. You're going to take an exterior piece and a lining piece and put them right sides together. Make sure that all the edges are nice and even, and then we're going to clip. So you want to clip this edge right here. You want to clip right around this middle section right here, and then you'll want to clip this edge right here. And then after everything is all clipped or pinned into place, we're just going to sew. We'll sew this side right here. We'll sew around the middle section and down the opposite side. Do not sew across the top of the handles yet. Now I'll start sewing that first seam, and I'm going to sew about 3/8 of an inch away from the edge, and I'll stitch with a stitch length of 2.5. And you do want to back stitch at both ends. And as always, take the curves slowly and make sure that all of your edges are staying nice and even. And when you get to the top of the handle here, just backstitch. Now we'll start to sew the middle section. Then again, you just want to backstitch when you get to the top of the handle. Now you'll go ahead and sew the opposite side the same way. And when you're done sewing this, you're going to do the same exact thing to the other side of the bag. I have all of the seams sewn, and then I just ironed them open. And I just, again, ironed them from one side. So that's one half of the bag. And then on the other half of the bag, I did exactly the same thing. But on this one, I actually turned the piece right side out. So you want to have one piece right side out and one piece that is wrong side out. Now we want to sew on that closure pouch. So what I did here is I marked 2 inches down from this edge, and I have a line right here showing that. And we're going to place the little closure pouch against that line, and we want it to be evenly spaced from side to side. But we're not going to pin and sew through both the exterior and the lining. We're only going to sew through the exterior. So you need to open this up. and fold back your lining. And then once you have your lining folded back, we can place the pouch on that line, and then you'll just measure from side to side to make sure that the distance is equal. Now I've placed a few pins here just to hold everything in place, and we're going to sew a box around like this. So what I want to do right now is mark a line 4 inches above this side of the flap. And the box where we'll be sewing is going to go from this line of stitching. This was the top stitching above the zipper. We're going to stitch right over that line right there. Then we're going to stitch over the top stitching along the edge. Then we'll pivot and stitch right up this line here. Pivot again, and you're going to stitch right along this row of top stitching back to where you started. So your box should be 4 inches up from this side, and that's where my line of top stitching is, and then 4 inches up from this side. Now I'm going to start sewing around that box, and I'll sew with a stitch length of 3.0. Again, you just want to follow that previous top stitching. You'll pivot. Now remember that you're only sewing through this exterior piece. You do not want to catch the lining in this seam. And now that I'm near the line that I drew, I will pivot again and stitch across my line. Pivot again. And now we'll stitch over where I started just to secure everything down. And you can give a little back stitch. Now that we have the pouch sewn on, we want to join the two sides of the bag together by sewing them together right up here at the tops of the handles. So I'm going to take the other side of the bag, and I'm going to place that on the bottom here, and this is going on the top. Now what we're essentially going to do is insert this piece up through here. So in between the exterior and the lining, we're going to insert the handles. Now, of course, I can't find my bodkin, which would make this easier. You can also use a safety pin. I'm going to take my little ruler right here, and I'm going to put it right up into this side of the handle. So you can see it's right in between the exterior and the lining. Then I'm going to fold over the top. I'm just going to put a little pin in there to hold everything in place, just like that. And then I'm going to take that handle, and I'm going to go up in between my exterior and my lining, right up into the handle on the other side. Just push it through. And now you can see, here it is. Here's the top of it. I'm going to take out that ruler, and I want this to be nice and flat right here, and then I'll just pull it down just enough to get the edges to be even. And you can see that I have the right sides together. So this is the handle right here that I just inserted right here, and this is the other handle, the other side of the handle, and I'll just put a few clips in there. And then we'll go over to the sewing machine and just sew this straight across with a 1/2 inch seam. So I'm going to go ahead and do that off camera. And then you'll want to do the same exact thing to the other side of the bag. Now I've sewn across the tops of both handles. When I sewed them, I turned in the seam allowance from the lining towards the center. So now what we want to do is reach in between the layers here, and we're just going to pull everything right side out. And here's where the other handle is, and you're just going to pull it right side out. So now the handles are sewn together at the tops, and now we need to sew together the rest of the bag. So you want to take the bag like this. You'll open it up. So I have the exterior on this side and I have the lining on this side. So now you want to match up your sides and clip all along the length. And when you get to where the seam is here, where the lining is joined to the exterior, make sure that you match up those seams so that they're laying together nicely. They're all lined up. And then just clip to the other end. And then you want to go ahead and clip the other side in the same way. Then for the bottoms of the bag, you want to clip the right sides of the exterior together. And then when you sew, you want to sew completely across the bottom of the exterior. But when you clip the lining side together, you're going to leave an opening. So these are just straight seams. You can sew right across the bottom of the exterior. You can sew right along the length of the side of the bag on both sides, and then you can sew across the bottom of the lining piece, but make sure that you leave an opening. I'll be sewing with a stitch length of 2.5 with a 1/2 inch seam. I've sewn down both sides of the bag and I pressed everything open. Then on the exterior side bottom, I sewed straight across and I pressed that open. And then on the lining side bottom, I only sewed from about here to here on each side, and I left an opening. Now we're ready to close up all of the corners. So it doesn't matter which corner you start with. I'll start here with the lining. Make sure that your seams are open, and then you want to match up the center of the seams so that they're together when you clip them. I'll put a clip right in the center, and then one on each end. And then I'm going to go over to the opposite corner on the exterior side and do exactly the same thing. And then after I have that side clipped, I want to take this end right here and I want to bring it up to the lining side. So basically it's like this. You have this length here and you're just going to bring them together just like this. And then you want to clip both of those corners together. Make sure that you line up all the edges so the edge of the lining should be even with the edge of the exterior. You can see I need to adjust that a little bit. But once you have that all clipped together, you're going to sew straight across with a 1/2 inch seam. And what this is going to do by clipping them together like this and sewing them together, it's going to prevent the lining from being pulled out of the bag, and it will hold it down very nicely. So get everything clipped in place on both sides and then go ahead and sew that seam, and I'm going to do that off camera. Now all my bottom corners are sewn into place just like this. So now what you want to do is reach into the opening in the lining and you'll pull everything right side out. And then once you have it right side out, you'll just reach in and push out those corners. The lining cannot come out because it's all attached right in here. Now you want to press everything really well. Press out your handles nicely. Make sure that all the seams are rolled right to that center there, all the way around. And then I like to reach inside and I just smooth everything out. I want the lining and the edges of my exterior all to be together. So I do that on both sides. And then I want to iron down my sides. So what I like to do is pull out the bottom corner here, and then I fold it over like this. So what I have down here at the bottom is sort of a little triangle, and then I have the same distance on each side from this seam. Then I'll take my iron and give that a nice pressing. And then I can fold this back just like this. Press it down nicely on both sides. And you'll do the same thing on both sides of the bag. Make sure you have a nice diamond shape down there. Now one thing I like to do is top stitch 1/8 of an inch away from this folded edge on both sides. So on this side and on this side. And that actually gives the bag some nice structure. You don't have to do that step. That's optional. The inside where we sewed the lining and the exterior together across this bottom here, that's going to hold the lining in place. The purpose of doing this top stitching is just to have a little bit more structure. So if you want, you can go ahead and do that top stitching now, and you also want to top stitch all around the handles, 1/8 of an inch all the way from the edge. And I'm going to go and do that off camera. Now I just finished my edge stitching. I stitched all the way around on both sides of this side right here. I used a stitch length of 3.0 for everything. And then I did the same thing. I stitched all the way around on both sides. And then I did the same thing on the end here. Then I went ahead and I edge stitched on the folds that we ironed in before. Now if you want to do this stitching right here, you need to do the edge stitching around the top first. And then you would go ahead and do that. And you're just going to go right from here all the way up to the top. So you can see it on this side, it's right here. And it's right to where that seam is. You just want to stop right before that seam. And now we can fold everything up, and the last thing that we need to do is put on the closure. So you could use either KAM Snaps like I'm going to use, or any other kind of snap, or you can use Velcro. You could even put a buttonhole in if you want and use a nice button, a nice decorative button. But that's totally up to you. So we turn this over, and we want to go this way with it. And first we're going to fold down this part right here. And you'll fold it right to where it's sewn in, so that top stitching that we put in there that's where you're going to fold it to, right to that sewing line. Then you take the other half, same thing, and you fold that up to the line of top stitching that we created. But one thing I will say about doing the edge stitching on these sides here, it does help you when you're folding the bag up to close. And then you're just going to take this side and fold it as far as it'll go. Now remember, we have that top stitching over here, so you want to fold that until it won't go anymore, and then you'll take the other half and fold it this way. And then once that's all folded, you want to actually fold it from this way. You'll fold this flap up and then this flap down, just like this. And this is what it looks like on the back. Now we need to put in the snaps. So you can just put one in the center if you want. I'm actually going to put in two. So about here and about here. And you want to make sure that wherever you put your snap, that it's going to land on the bottom flap here. I'm going to run a little video clip from another video I did on how to install the KAM Snaps. You'll do everything exactly the same way for this pouch that I show you in the other video. To put in the KAM Snaps, you want to find the center of your flap, and I have it right here. So you'll just poke a hole right into the center there. Make sure that you don't poke yourself. And then you want to take your KAM Snaps. So here's what the KAM Snaps look like. You have pieces that look like a cap that have a very pointy tip on them. And then you have two more pieces. One is a female piece and the other one is the male piece. So first we're going to put the male piece onto our pouch. So we're going to take one of the caps with the pointy ends, and we'll take the male piece right here. And you'll take the point on the cap and put it through the hole that we just created with the point. Make sure that point comes all the way through, and then you'll take the male piece and you'll put it on that point. Then you want to take your tool, this is the setter for the KAM Snaps, and you want to set the cap into the bottom part right here. So you'll get that in place. Make sure that the cap is sitting inside of this black well right here, and make sure that this top part is over the male part, and then you just want to squeeze. This is what it should look like from the side. Just want to squeeze it nice and hard, and then when you take it off, that pointy part has been compressed, and that's what's holding that in place. That's what's holding the male part in place there. Now we need to decide where to put the female part of the snap. And what I normally do is I'll take this, fold it over, and I'll press down really hard. And then the male side of the snap will leave a little bit of impression on your fabric. Now you can't see it on camera, but I'm just going to poke a little hole where the center of that snap landed. And then I'm going to take one of the caps and I'm going to put it on the inside and poke it through the hole, just like that. And then I'll take the female piece and I'll put that on that pointy post there. And then you'll do the exact same thing. You're going to seat the cap into the black well right there. You'll get everything lined up, and then you'll press. I have all the snaps installed, and I just want to point out that on the bottom flap, the caps of the snap go on this side, and you'll fold this up, and on the top flap, the caps go on the outside. These KAM snaps are actually very strong, and you'll find out how strong they are if you ever have to take one out. So then we can just put our little wristlet on here. And there you go. You have another very cute and useful little project. And you have this nice zipper in the back. So if you just want to have a light day and of shopping and you don't want to take too many things with you, you have a compartment here where you can put a few things that you'll need to bring with you. And then once you've made your purchases, you can open everything up and put them inside the bag. I hope that you've enjoyed this video as much as I've enjoyed bringing it to you. And I sincerely thank all the people who have supported me by subscribing to my channel. And if you haven't already done so, I would love to have you as a subscriber. So please like and subscribe.